corporatism triumphing over democracy. That was, this is the question that I raised in my op-ed today over at HartmannReport.com, my daily take. And it's pretty straightforward stuff. I mean, back in 1886, the Supreme Court did not rule that corporations are persons and therefore entitled to rights under the 14th Amendment or the Bill of Rights, even. They did not rule that. In fact, they ruled the opposite of that. They ruled that the Santa Clara, or the Santa Fe Railroad, I guess it was, had to pay the tax that was being charged, even though it was different than it was in Santa Clara County, even though it was different than it was in Santa Ana County. But the chief clerk, or the single clerk of the court, his name was John Chandler Bancroft Davis, J.C. Bancroft Davis, whose father had been the governor of Massachusetts. He himself had been a railroad president, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. He wrote in the headnote for that case, we've talked about this before, he wrote in the headnote that the Chief Justice, in a side conversation, had said, we're not going to debate whether corporations are persons, we all agree that they are. Now, Waite, when he said that, the Chief Justice, Morrison Remick Waite, when he said that, what he was talking about was whether a corporation can be forced to pay taxes. There's two kinds of personhood. There's natural persons, that's you and me, and there's artificial persons, that's corporations. Both, by virtue of their personhood, pay taxes. But, in 1886, natural persons were the only ones who had access to the Bill of Rights. To say, that they have free speech, that they can buy politicians, that they have the right to privacy, that they don't have to testify against themselves. All of these things that corporations are now using to block any effort to control or regulate corporate activity. So, the court did not rule that corporations are persons in that 1886 case. Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. But the and like I said, the railroad ended up having to pay their tax. But the court later, like a decade or two later, on several occasions now, in fact, on over 30 occasions in the nearly 100 years since then, actually it's more than 100 years since then, the court has repeatedly pointed to the headnote, which is not a legal decision. It's just a comment by Davis. But they refer to this headnote and say, yeah, corporations are persons. We've got to reverse this. I mean, this is nuts. This is, this is the culmination of what Mussolini called corporatism. He said famously in the Italian Encyclopedia Italiana, he said, fascism should more correctly be called corporatism because it's about the merger of corporate and state interests. And that's exactly what fascism is, and that's exactly what, the Supreme Court has been bringing to us. And then they doubled down on this in 1996, I believe it was, with Buckley, Buckley versus Vallejo, and then in 76, and then in 78 they doubled down with First National Bank versus Bellotti. So what we're seeing here is just the rapid disintegration of human rights as they're being replaced by human rights being given to corporations, who then use those rights to increase their domination, their dominance over our world, over our political systems, over everything, pretty much. Now, what can we do about this? Well, there's really basically only two solutions or two answers, and they both have to do with ending corporate personhood. The first is to, change the composition of the U.S. Supreme Court so that they can revisit their own decisions in Buckley and in Bellotti and in Citizens United, and for that matter, in Santa Clara County. So that's one option. That's going to be the most difficult option because it would take Congress, an act of Congress to expand the court. And, Franklin Roosevelt threatened it, but the last time it was really done was, in any meaningful way, was by the Ulysses Grant presidency, when they took the Supreme Court from 6 people back up to 9 people. So, because they had dropped it from 10 down to 6 people when Lincoln died because they didn't want Andrew Johnson to appoint anybody. So that's the first way, is changing the composition of the court. The second way is for Congress to pass a law saying corporations are not persons. And the Supreme Court, whatever they say, it doesn't matter. We have the final say in this, asserting their Article 3, Section 2 powers. Will they do that? Will they pull it off? Will it succeed? I don't know. I mean, this is one of those, have we reached the point where corporations are triumphing over democracy? It sure looks like it to me. So we've got a long way to go with this thing. And, it's a major battle, and it doesn't get anywhere near the coverage it should in the media, because the big media corporations are corporations first and media second. They love the fact that they have these rights, these powers that humans arguably don't have. Humans can't live forever. Corporations can. Humans need water to, clean water to drink and clean air to breathe. Corporations don't. Humans have, a whole variety of weaknesses that corporations don't have. Physical bodies, frail physical bodies. Corporations have no body. No body. So why are we making corporations, why are we giving them precedence over humans? Well, the answer, I think, goes back to, and this is, also the reason why Republicans are constantly promoting strongman kind of governments and things like that. I think it goes back to, 7,000 years of relatively modern human history, what we call Western civilization, or Eastern civilization for that matter. The last 7,000 years, basically, pretty much everybody on earth has been ruled by dictator kings. Popes, they call themselves, or pharaohs or whatever, but they're dictator kings. They're warlord kings. And so the corporation is basically, a clone of that. Corporations have become little kingdoms, and the CEOs are the kings, or queens, as the case may be. And so, we're giving all these powers to corporations by way of basically, taking them away from humans. And it has left us in the situation where corporations now are buying off our politicians left and right. And corporations are massive price gouging. It's one of the reasons why inflation was so bad. In fact, what little inflation we have left appears to be almost 100% corporate price gouging. President Biden is starting to talk about this more. But we've got to do something about corporate personhood. This is a big deal. We'll be right back, coming up on 15 minutes past the hour in about 10 seconds.